Okay, who's been in Austin for over a year? Okay, anybody like fresh to Austin, been here less than a couple months? Oh, I love this, awesome. Welcome. Okay, you came at the right time. It's going to be perfect weather in about a month, and then it's going to be hot and muggy, and so so enjoy it right now while you're here. You picked the right time to move here at least. So this is a little bit about myself. My background is in technology. I worked in hard sciences and robotics labs. I did a complete 180 with my career and started a film production company. I moved to Los Angeles and got into the kind of the content productions piece. I loved what I was doing, helping people with their ideas, make that come true, but I made no money at all. So I moved out here to Austin and started working at Capital Factory and basically wanted to help entrepreneurs, help tech entrepreneurs build their companies. I love it. Some don't tell Capital Factory this, but I get to geek out with people and they pay me to do it. So, so I'm excited to hear what you guys are working on. And Capital Factory, I'll do a little overview, but Capital Factory really is a resource for Austin startups and entrepreneurs as you guys build your companies. So I did a little bit of this. Did anybody go on the tour today? Cool, awesome. Anybody went to UT? All right, covered that. Has anybody been to South by Southwest before? Cool. For new folks in town, South by Southwest is coming up in March 13th through 20th. It's the coolest, craziest, biggest shit show in Austin, and so definitely do a little research there. Yeah, folks who've been here for a while know. Yeah. In my opinion, it's like Disneyland and Las Vegas got together and had a tech film music conference in Austin. It's nuts, but it's a great time to connect with people. There's official stuff you got to pay a lot of money for. There's unofficial stuff which is just as good, and you can make the most out of that. Anybody looking for a job? Awesome. Anybody the founder of a startup? Awesome. Oh, I love that. Heck yes. Anybody looking for investors? Cool. I covered that. So I'm going to cover a little bit about what is special about Austin, what kind of set up Austin as a hub for tech innovation, who are influencers in the entrepreneurship space, how you can get plugged in. And then after my spiel, I'll try and keep it quick, but we'll get to a great panel with these speakers up here, and you can ask them what it's like working in the VR space, working for a startup, running a startup, and really that's a goal for today. Give you guys a lot of time to ask questions. If you're looking for more information, the second Tuesday of every month is an event very similar to this. It's called Intro to Fundraising and Ask Me Anything. So especially for the folks who are looking at raising some capital, check that out. The third Tuesday is basically an extended version of what I'm going to talk about in this first 15-20 minutes. Fourth Tuesday is Founder Stories. We typically invite a serial entrepreneur to come in and tell his or her story about running a company and exiting the company. Check those out. Usually there are some like really great speakers. You also have a really funny look at what running a company is. These are folks who have like sold their companies and will tell you the good, the bad, the ugly because they're not hyping up their company anymore. They're done with it. And so I've heard some really funny stories there. You can find these slides online, a version of these slides online. You can also check out a lot of stuff on our website, capitalfactory.com. Okay, so this is typically where a speaker would tell you to follow me, and that's my plug. I'm not going to do that. I don't post anything online. Follow our founder, Joshua Bayer. He posts like crazy on Twitter, and he's the most plugged in person in tech entrepreneurship in Texas, not just Austin, but in Texas. Our Capital Factory Twitter is also a good resource if you're looking for events. The VR stuff comes out of @CF VR Lab. @ATX Startup Scene is another good, just general Texas startup scene. There's a website down there as well. For folks who aren't doing Twitter, we have an Instagram. Some people like that more. It's another good resource. Okay, so Austin's kicking ass. Some of these slides are a little old, but the trends are still taking hold. So Austin is a really well positioned for the startup ecosystem. There's a ton of people moving here. There's a long history of technology, and it's a pretty cool spot, you know? So you have a good culture here. One of the biggest things is that the cost of living is not San Francisco. You know, you can afford to buy a house here, still for maybe another year or two. You can get a cheap rent, and your salary goes further here. So there's a lot of startups that are setting up shop here. Indeed ranks us as one of the top places to get a job in the country. I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. This is an interesting one. The Kauffman Index is a group that puts out a report on entrepreneurship. For the last like 3 or 4 years, Austin's been ranked 1 or 2. We got bumped out about 2 years ago when Magic Leap raised like $1 billion in Florida. So that skewed the numbers a bit. But what you see here is that between Austin, Round Rock, and the kind of surrounding area, San Marcos, there's a ton of startup activity. I'll speculate on this a little bit, but I think it's in part because you have a powerhouse like UT that is generating a lot of IP and a lot of talent that's coming out of it. I think UT has one of the largest CS departments each year, or CS graduating classes each year. And you have this great history of technology. You got companies like Dell that are an institution, and then you've got Apple's like second largest headquarters is out here. You've got Google now. You've got all these big tech companies that are moving here, and that's really creating that density of talent and resources. I wouldn't be a Texan if I didn't try and boast this, but if Texas were a country, it would be the 12th largest economy in the world. I think this is indicative of a lot of what represents Texas startups. There's this bootstrap mentality here. So in the Valley, these companies will raise a ton of money, and especially in the AR/VR space as well, these companies raise a lot of money, and they're celebrating, right? But they still haven't maybe done anything. And so you've kind of seen this wave of AR/VR startups collapsing, but a lot of that is based on these huge raises that haven't really materialized. Companies in Texas, on the other hand, a lot of them are bootstrapping, right? And so they're operating very lean. They're working on their products. They're working on scalable business models, and that in turn creates a really like a not brittle startup ecosystem here. Resilient, that's what I was looking for. Okay, here's another plug for South by. So Capital Factory runs a ton of programming here during South by. It's a mixture of official things and unofficial things, so you don't necessarily need the South by badge. I would go online, apply for our VIP lounge. We have a lot of networking that's happening here. We have investors from all over the world, government officials, C-level execs. So there's a lot of opportunities to get plugged in and meet the right people here. If you want more information on South by specifically, you can go to house.capitalfactory.com. So this was a pitch event that we did at one of the South by venues a couple years ago. It's packed. Do more and more events like that. Another good thing to put on your calendars, this is a long ways away, but Austin Startup Week is usually that first week in October in between ACL weekends, and it's really like a mini South by. It's like a South by but just for Austin. So we do a whole week of programming that's focused on startups and different technologies. So that's a good one to put on your radar. All right, let's see if I can get my video to work here. This is an event called Startup Crawl that we'll be doing Friday, March 13th. It kind of kicks off some of the South by interactive programming that we're doing. Okay, it's called the crawl. It's like a pub crawl, but instead of going from pub to pub, you go from startup office to startup office. It's an absolute crazy event, but it's really fun. And again, if you're looking to like, how do I get my finger on the pulse for startups, this is a good event. So startups from all over, we'll have tables set up, booths, be demoing the products, doing launches. And then it's not just here at Capital Factory, but it's all over downtown. So we'll have host stops that are welcoming people. Okay, so here's a little bit more of digitally who to follow to stay plugged in with things. Austin Startup Digest. So this is an organization that operates in a number of different cities. I was living in California before I came here. Was really plugged into the San Diego Startup Digest. It's just a really good calendar and set of resources for events and happenings that are going on, all focused on startup and entrepreneurship. So I would say do some due diligence when you're looking at this stuff, because some stuff seems like it'll be interesting and it's not. But this aggregates a lot of the events that are happening in Austin. Again, here's a plug for our CEO. He's very active on Twitter, for better or for worse, but almost any tech or entrepreneurship event that's happening in Austin, he'll be trying to share and get people plugged into. So here's a Facebook group, Austin Startups. If Facebook is your thing, that's a really good one. For the folks who are looking to get hired, let's see if I got it up here. Capital Factory Jobs is one. There's another one, Austin Digital Jobs. This is a really good one as well. I would take a look at this. Whether you're a founder who's hiring, post on here, or you're looking for a job, keep an eye on this. Again, I would say exercise due diligence on this stuff. Startups are a risk, so make sure that you're doing some vetting when you're looking for jobs here. But I've posted a number of jobs on here and had some really good responses. For folks who are just looking to maybe dip their toes in, see how they can get more involved in the tech ecosystem or the startup ecosystem, this is a good Facebook website for volunteering your time. I've met some really fun, wacky, wild people that you volunteer at an event together and you wind up realizing, hey, I actually want to work with that person later on. So if you're looking to get plugged in, volunteering is a great way, and it really ties you close with the organizations that you're volunteering with. So folks who are working on their own initiative, coming here to Capital Factory is a really great way to meet your co-founder. Obviously, everybody here in this room is interested in AR, VR, right? So if you're a founder and you're looking to build something, it's a lot easier to do that with a team. Come here to Capital Factory and meet these people. 3-Day Startup is an interesting program. If you have a good idea and you're looking to build a team around this, flesh out the idea, 3-Day Startup is a program that basically does a weekend hackathon, but it's really focused on building the business model and the business side of it. So not necessarily building the product itself, but is this a good idea for a business? I've done one of these and it was, I did not have a good business idea, but I found that out at the end of the weekend. So it's kind of a good thing. They do it periodically here in Austin. Keep an eye out for those. It's a fun weekend if nothing else. So accelerators are another option for growing your business. Capital Factory runs an accelerator program, but there's a lot of other ones, and they all have different value propositions. So we have companies that go through multiples. You may think it's a competitive thing, but really it's not that competitive. So Capital Factory, we're a network-based accelerator. So what that means is it's kind of like a gym. You come in here and there's mentors and investors and you have space and you have events. All these things are really set up to help startups, but we're not necessarily going to run you through a boot camp to show you what to do, when, and where. So we need the startups to say, hey, I'm looking for an investor who can introduce me. I'm looking for a mentor who can help me with marketing, and we can help you find those people. Div Inc. is a really fun accelerator. They're focused on diverse founders. Techstars is a pretty common one that's a little more boot camp style. Texas Venture Labs, so we're based at UT. Mass Challenge is fairly new to Austin, but it's growing pretty rapidly. Sputnik is another one like that. Here are a few investors in town, VC firms in town. You'll notice that no one necessarily here is saying VR, so VR, AR. So as the panelists might be able to tell you, finding VR and AR specific investors can still be a challenge in Texas. And anybody who's saying differently, take that with a grain of salt. So a lot of the funding in this space is still happening out in the valley. But again, looking at how Texas operates, consider if you can bootstrap first. This is my colleague Justin downstairs in our virtual reality lab. On the 5th floor of Capital Factory, we have a room with almost all the different kinds of AR, VR headsets. And basically this is a resource for folks in Austin to come try VR. We demo the content that our startups are creating, we advocate for them, we show what they're doing. So if you're interested in checking it out, let me know. Okay, so here's some good stuff. Why Austin for VR? So this is getting a little bit of my take on this, but Austin has a really interesting history in technology. There's actually a big gaming history here. So like the Portalarium folks, some of the first MMORPGs were built here in Austin. And it's got this great film scene too. You've got the South by Southwest Film Festival here. You've got this kind of, it's not really an underground film ecosystem, but it's just not as flashy as Hollywood or LA. But Texas is big. So when you look at all of that, all the film stuff happening here, there's a fair amount of activity here. And VR, in my mind, is kind of at the center of all of that. You need technology, you need gaming expertise, you need people who understand film and content. And so because of that, it's had some right conditions for the VR ecosystem to take off. Here's are some of the VR startups in Austin. Let's see, Alchemy Labs here, they were acquired by Google a while ago. They're also one of the first VR-only game studios. Passmore VR is a big LA guy who's he's been in the 3D film space when that was going up and down. The Way VR, You're Ready, Part-Time Evil. Almost all these folks have been around and kind of weathered the storm, some of the hype cycle storm of AR VR, and I'm thankful to have some of these folks here. So more VR. IBM does a fair amount of immersive stuff. Mutual Mobile, Fjord has a studio here. And then there's big VR companies here. So Microsoft, Samsung, Intel, AMD. A lot of these groups don't necessarily have their VR teams headquarters here, but they have great ties into the VR departments, right? And so don't be afraid to leverage that. In my experience, so I'm always reaching out to beg, borrow, and steal for things. I'm asking for headsets, I'm asking for speakers. And if you can meet someone from Facebook here, well, they're probably not the right VR person, but they can introduce you to the right person. So definitely consider that an opportunity as you're building your XR network here. Here's some folks who've done VR work here at Capital Factory. Booz Allen Hamilton is a defense contractor. They've got a big studio downstairs on the 8th floor. ExxonMobil, they're not as active as they used to be here. Walmart has an innovation studio here. They've done a little bit of VR. Their department here in Austin is more focused on AI, but they do some XR things here once in a while. Okay, there's a lot of events like this, probably better ones than this, but they all have their different flavors. So if you haven't been on meetup.com and searched AR, VR, XR, and you're looking to build your network, definitely do that. I'm gonna pick out a couple here. VR Austin is a really big one. They were, I think at one point they were the second or third biggest VR meetup in the country. I think they do it bi-monthly now, and it's usually just a lot of demos, a lot of networking, a lot of good people. And so if you wanted one event that I would recommend, check out that one. Probably the next best one is VR and 360 Video Meetup. Ricky Holm actually runs that one. That one's a little more focused on the business side of AR and VR. And then a personal favorite, not necessarily strictly VR, but PAX South in San Antonio. If you've never been to a PAX conference, it's awesome. It's 20,000 nerds, just gamers and nerds all together, and so that's a really fun one. A lot of different Facebook groups and subreddits for any Redditors here. Check those out. And then here's some folks who are some VCs and investors who are active in Austin. These aren't all folks who are located here in Austin, but they have a presence here. They come to Austin regularly. Check those folks out. Told you a little bit about the Capital Factory VR Lab. Okay, so these are some of the questions that we're going to get into today. Before we do that, any questions from the audience on what I've covered so far? Cool. All right. What we're going to do next is I'm going to welcome our panelists up onto the stage. If you guys want to come up and grab a seat.
Lively crowd this afternoon.
I know, right? So we've got Brianna Benson, who you are an AR designer and developer at IBM's Immersive Studios. Is that correct?
Correct.
Clint Sawin, who's the CEO and founder of Remappable, and Ricky Holm, who's the CEO and founder of Chocolate Milk and Donuts, which best branding and best swag ever. Literally chocolate milk and donuts. So maybe to kick things off, I'd love for you guys to tell me a little bit about your roles and what you're building.
So my role, I was hired as a designer, and even though I do work for IBM, our project is more of a startup approach, and we kind of have to bootstrap everything ourselves too. So I definitely found myself in accidentally becoming a developer. So that happened, but now I'm currently focusing more along the lines of design and user research. But my team and I are building an augmented and virtual reality data visualization app. So you could put it on a headset, or you could take your phone and use it with ARKit. But yeah, that's what we're focused on right now.
That's awesome.
I'm Clint. I'm the CEO and founder of Remappable, and we're actually delivering therapies with augmented reality to people's homes. So we're actually eliminating the trip to the clinic and reimagining basically the landscape of the delivery of pain and physical therapies by leveraging augmented reality in its lowest latency so it can be delivered mobilely on 5G networks.
That's awesome. Ricky, how about yourself?
Hey everybody, my name is Ricky. I'm the founder of Chocolate Milk and Donuts. We're a creative studio here in Austin. So we design, develop, R&D, all the things when it comes to creating, basically helping folks at companies mainly that have ideas about, hey, we want to do this thing in VR, right? We want to put people, turn them into a Tide Pod. We're going to put them inside of a washing machine in VR. And it's like, okay, fun idea, but like, let's work through that. And so we help people through the entire process. Most of our clients are advertising agencies, or we're getting more and more into working with larger corporations as well, helping them create training. I think back there you said something about education or training. So we have some of that project stuff going on. We're doing some R&D. If I jump and grab my phone and run away, it's because we have a client who's going to test a product live this afternoon that we've been building. It's basically a virtual reality version of Skype. And so we do lots of different stuff. We have a team of about 7 now. And to Brance's point, we're 3 years and some change old, and we were completely bootstrapped. And so it's been a battle, but we own the whole thing. So at the end of the day, it's a good way to go for that regard.
Awesome. So I'd love to hear I love hearing how people got into VR. So I'm wondering if y'all can tell us how did you first get into the XR space, what that journey was like, and yeah, just in that story there.
So I studied civil engineering actually at UT, and then through that I took an engineering internship with the Navy back in 2016, and that was the same summer that the HoloLens came out. So I was kind of just thrown in there and had an amazing headset that no one really believed when I tried to describe what it actually did. So that was kind of crazy and kind of insane, and I wanted to study that back at school, but obviously besides computer science there wasn't really a degree program for me, so I finished up engineering and explored that whenever I could. So I took every single internship that had mixed reality a part of it, and then I also had research while I was still in school that was mixed reality, and took a gaming class and kind of whatever I could get my hands on.
That's interesting. I feel like now I'm seeing more and more programs at UT or at ACC that are designed around building AR and VR, building immersive content. But even a few years ago, really, there wasn't that. And so people were hand rolling their own tools. They were like, okay, I'm a game developer that's built stuff in Unity, but I think I can do this and for your headsets. there were like film content creators who are like, what the heck is this 360 stuff? And can I start doing this? So that's cool to hear your experience. Clint, how about yourself?
My story's kind of similar. I've always been interested in perception and visual marriage between the brain and the visual cortex, but that's a little deep. But so in 2014, I returned to UT to actually reskill basically in 3D spatial design because I saw the potential of what virtual reality could do in any space. And I thought it was really the only opportunity where I would have access to the hardware, where I could actually piece stuff together, because it was just completely out of hands from a bootstrap standpoint outside of an academic community. So I went back to UT, and while that was going on, same period of time that Brianna was there, kind of mishmashed together each department kind of like she did in order to actually combine all the elements in order to kind of Franken-tech our own way of making things and kind of showing that virtual reality or augmented reality could be used in different ways. But it definitely was, when we were there, it was definitely Franken-tech, that's for sure. Because you'd have to go to different departments, beg for hardware, bring it over. It was pretty interesting. But that's how I jumped into the XR space. But specifically, all my life I've been interested in that whole idea of perception and how the image can actually have the power of the image, because I have a background in film also and gaming.
So maybe I want to jump into Remappable here real quick. So you're building pain management therapy for
specifically for amputee victims. It's our first vertical. So people with limb loss, actually 80% of them actually suffer within the first year after acute care, which is leaving inpatient, a thing called phantom limb pain. And the majority of them do not get the face-to-face therapy that they should be getting that would actually alleviate their pain. So most of them are actually given opioids, and we all know what that means. So what we're doing is we're replicating in real time the operational limb into digital space and actually giving those therapies to those people delivered to their homes. So there's everybody gets what they need without need for cost, distance, etc. So yeah,
That's
so
cool.
with augmented reality. So we're doing that with upper limb right now and lower limb. So, and we'll start working on the myoelectrics, which is a little bit more geeky, and how those processes that we're working in machine learning will actually tie into actually operational effects for prosthetics later on.
So I want to jump in here too. I use the term XR, AR, and VR in this first bit. Has everybody heard XR before? Yeah? Okay. So I use XR kind of as a substitute for AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality. But I've also heard it in this kind of extended reality terminology that starts to blend in things like AI, machine learning, IoT. And so I think that's interesting that while you're starting to tease it out right now, that's definitely computational intelligence in content.
It is extended realities because we're attaching not just the basic visual image and motion and the motion control. We're actually finding that you have to add those elements on the back end for it to actually be a functionally able process in order for it to be delivered in an effective way. They all start to stack up on each other. Like within healthcare, we have to deal with blockchain for data delivery and patient delivery and HIPAA regulation, et cetera, et cetera. So they're all coming together into one thing. And machine learning, especially from the therapeutic side, because we can actually take that decision tree that a therapist would do in person, and those decisions can be made in a cloud application. So that's extended reality, I guess, is what you're kind of speaking to.
Yeah, I know this isn't really I guess this is the topic we're on now. But it's interesting you bring that up, because that's something that I think we've discovered in the last year or two, that when I first started this, I got into this from, very long story, but did lots of things in my past life, as I say, and fell into this because I was basically, I was working at a video production studio here in town. I was very, very bored. It wasn't challenging anymore, and video production is becoming commoditized because we all have 4K cameras on our cell phones, and the story goes on. And so a gentleman, Capital Factory actually, had just sold or was in the process of selling his second company, and he was a mentor of mine. And I asked him, I said, "Hey Andy, I'm looking for something new." And he goes, "Hey, try this VR thing." I was like, "I'm not a gamer, not interested." And he's like, "Just give it a shot." And I watched this Cirque du Soleil experience, and it was on a crappy Samsung S6 phone that got super hot after like 30 seconds of using it. on the old school Samsung VR system, and it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, and I'll never forget that moment. And that was when I got hooked, and I was just like, holy smokes, this is like a newfound way to tell stories. And I've always been a big like storyteller, been in love with film my whole life, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, okay, I'm in. And we've just continued to evolve as a company ever since then. Building our own 360 cameras from scratch and pipe, and I mean, it was crazy. Luckily, you can rent those now. It's much easier. And the software actually works. But what I was going to say is, when we started, it was just about us. Like, we would go to a client and say, "We're going to shoot you 360 video, and it's going to be awesome because it's 360 video." But we didn't really always conceptualize the full context of what we were doing. And so most of our work isn't in such a niche environment of like that type of, amputee trainee type stuff. But for instance, before I get to the story, I think it's incredibly important to understand what you're saying, is that XR, even if you're working in AR, you're really working in XR. Because if your solution, if your product, if whatever it is you're building doesn't tie into a complete ecosystem and take all of these different things into account, no one's ever going to use it. And so, for instance, we just did a beautiful training experience it was like a sales and marketing tool, totally different project in my head. The client went and they closed Airbnb 24 hours after we delivered it for a multi-million-dollar contract. We had the COO of Airbnb wearing our experience while it was literally fresh off the presses, and as soon as he did that, all they did was talk about this thing that we created. And so it was like a deal closer for them. Great, fun story. But what we had to do is, this system is controlled by a tablet. So if I bring in, what's your name?
J.O.
J.O.? Hi. So if I walk into an office with J.O. and I want to give him a presentation, here, put this VR headset on. Well, if I just give him a headset, and I have to teach him how to use it, right? He has to understand, he's got to get over that initial shock, or I can control it with a tablet. But in order to control this headset with a tablet, my tablet and that headset have to be on the same Wi-Fi. Go into any corporate office in the city and try and get your foreign device on their Wi-Fi.
Doesn't work.
Good luck, right? So just in order to deliver this simple sales experience, we had to create custom Pelican cases that had Wi-Fi built in, charging systems, like this whole package of using security protocols and all these different technologies, just so our client could roll into an office and within 30 seconds they could have an entire group of executives in a headset getting blown away. And so that's just, the more we think about that, great question, Brad, it's a great way to think about XR. The more we think about that is our solutions and the shit we build, stuff we build. It's just incredibly important to consider that whole, consider it all extended reality.
Brianna, I'd love to know what the work that you're doing at IBM. Is it research focused? Is it exploratory? Or are you working on client like solutions?
Kind of all of the above. When I first started, we were on HoloLens, which is Microsoft's augmented reality headset. And then since then, we went to ARKit, so transitioning from 3D back into 2D, kind of, because you still have the screen that you have to work with. And then now we are transitioning back into VR, and we are doing it with the Oculus Quest, if anyone's familiar with that. It's a really amazing headset, and it definitely changed my perception on VR because I never really understood why people would prefer that opposed to augmented reality, but when you put that on, I think it blows everyone away.
It really is, for any folks who haven't used it. That was a game changer for me. Like, I work in VR, I love VR. It is a big pain in the ass. Like, you're like connecting wires together, and you gotta have it hooked up to like a beast of a computer, and like still half the time it like doesn't work right, and you're like, oh god damn it. So the fact that they've got a self-contained headset that you can throw on, it works, it's got pretty good content, it's got pretty good tracking, like that's a game changer. I think I'll get into this question in a little bit, where I want to see how you guys view the progression of hardware, but now I think was a really pivotal moment for the industry. Before I move on, Brianna, I'm curious, coming back to this XR extended reality piece, IBM has a huge recognition in the AI space with Watson, and you're working in the data analytics and exploration piece. How are you guys blending together XR, VR, AR with AI, and how are those two technologies being married in your experience?
Yeah, so what we are currently doing is we are building it as an extension of some of our other business offerings, so our other products, and it'll specifically they're for data scientists. So it's a data exploration tool where you have the ability to send your data into a headset so that you could just see it in your space. But we do a lot of the Watson integrations because we have a Watson and Unity integration, and so that is really helpful. But a lot of it is the machine learning and the AI that everyone's familiar with, data exploration for Watson.
I think sometimes as I hear companies, execs talking about the data that they're storing and the amounts of data, the massive amounts of data that they're storing, okay, you need data scientists who can go through that. But unless you're a PhD level person, data science, sometimes it's just you're not gonna be able to get the info out of there. So I think there's great pre-baked tools and things like Excel can even do some pretty amazing things. But when you get on these larger scales, you need to give technicians better tools to explore that data as well. So that's interesting to hear what you're working on.
That's really cool that y'all are doing that, actually. Yeah.
It's fun.
So Clint and Ricky, I'd love to hear from you guys. Y'all have been in the space for a while. How have you seen the hardware change? Like, and maybe not. I want to expand this a little bit. Not just hardware, but the tools, the hardware and the tools that you use as creators. How have you seen that change? And what are you getting excited for as the next few years come up?
Quite simply, there's actually tools.
That's what I was gonna say, actually.
You know, we started with 360 video, and then we were literally making our own cameras. We were using photography software to like panoramic photography software to stitch stuff, and we literally had to stitch every single frame, 30 frames a second, 5-minute long videos. It's a lot of frames. So that's really great. Like Adobe Creative Suite, right? Photoshop, yada yada yada. They all support. Hi, Erin. She's part of the. Anyway, she is involved in the XR stuff here too. Totally lost my train of thought.
You have tools.
The tools, that's right. So they're great, right? The fact that companies like Adobe and these massive players in the market, Amazon, Apple, Google, I mean, almost any major technology player is starting to build the tools. It's simply enough to they support the formats that you're gonna.
Yeah, they've kind of started to embrace it finally.
That's
We're
right.
not Franken-teching everything together.
Yes.
We were starting with 2 connects to track 6 bodies in their data sets and projecting them in real time 2 years ago. Now you can actually almost have that done in the cloud if you actually know how to set it up.
That's great.
So, I mean, for me, that's what's just changed so drastically in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and as people that are folks that are interested in getting into the space, I think that's really great too. Like a lot of times, people ask, well, how can I get started? It's like, well, go download Unity. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just start playing with it, right? It's a simple software to use relatively. I'm not a developer, so I don't know very well. But I think that it's cool that those tools are becoming available. So that's really the big shift for me, and you're getting support from the major players. Because if Apple decides that they don't want to support your app anymore, that's tough, And it's not. It's going the other way. It's all trending the other way. Which is super cool. Hardware-wise, I'm just going to double down what Brant said. I own a VR company I have for years. The first VR headset I bought for myself was a Quest. The day it came available, I tried. I've accidentally sold 6 more of them. I let people try them. Like my girlfriend's aunt, who's a retired lady who lives in Jersey. She bought one after I took it to her house for Christmas. She started playing Arizona Sunshine, which is a zombie shooter game. She's screaming in the living room, and she immediately jumped on Amazon and bought one. I was like, oh my, what? That was mind blowing for me to see that shift. A lady who's got a 10-year-old TV bought this was instantly hooked, and so it was just, that is really cool to see.
I have to kind of agree with that, but I actually specifically know what it is about that headset because I'm digging into that range of motion and motion control, and that's kind of my thing, is that it handles that perception idea so seamlessly that someone doesn't have that shock value as much. And you just jump right into it. Your mind just completely accepts it, and it's just because they finessed certain little tiny elements, and it's not perfect by no means, but its parameters are perfect enough for the general user. and it's seamless. I mean, it really is seamless. So I do agree with that.
Yeah.
But I am excited about the HoloLens too,
Oh, yeah.
because of motion control and full articulation of the fingers and toes. But Azure Connect, which is basically the deprecated Kinect from gaming from a long time ago, which was full body control. We're actually using the same technology and implanting it in the cloud and into the headset, which is going to be completely wireless. So you'll have full range of motion and full capabilities for your entire hands, your feet, everything, your entire body. It will be completely body aware, and that to me is that stepping point into the future that's going to be a game changer. Honestly, that's what I believe.
Yeah, probably, you know, on top of that is the speed, right? Everyone's talking about 5G this, woo, yay, right? But really it's the amount of data that we're siphoning through. I'm sure you guys see it all the time. Like, it's like you just can't transfer stuff fast enough. And so you have to run everything on the processor of your phone, and that's very, very limited. And we're running out, right? We can't make these that much faster.
And they'll burn your hand if you
Yeah.
run them too long.
And so we're running into this hardware crossroads where, what is it, not Moore's Law. Is that the technology, right? Moore's? We've broken that, right? So we're not actually doubling computing power every however many years it is now. Like, that's been broken. And so being able to send infinite amounts of data, at least it seems that way now. In 10 years, we'll be like, we need more data, 6G. But that, I think, is gonna open up a lot of stuff, because you can already see now, like, Apple released theirs like 2 weeks ago. Apple's has been out for 6 months. Google released theirs about 2 weeks ago. You can run augmented reality strictly over the web.
Yep.
And it works pretty damn good. And so you've eliminated users' ability to have to download an application, right? Because mobile is the easiest way to target consumers. You know, so anytime you can start to speed that stuff up, you know, live streaming stuff, right? If you can now, you know, anyway, the data, that's what I'm excited about, is the speed of networks is gonna open up a lot of stuff. Because when you start getting into the size of the files that you're working with for this stuff, it's pretty
Yeah,
mind-blowing.
to speak to that, just like for non-techies out there, like, okay, so if I'm having to deliver something at 60 frames per second in order to not make somebody sick in a headset, this much motion in a hand takes more data than, it's amazing. It's like, you're pushing like 2 gigabytes of data per second if the person is moving fast. So that's a huge deal that's occurring right now, especially, yeah. No, I just wanna.
Yeah, so that change, which is being built as we speak, is gonna be cool.
And to add on to that, there are some interesting companies. Eighth Wall is one that's coming to mind. That's a like WebAR platform. WebAR is basically, I think it started maybe a Mozilla thing. Basically, like, can you give AR and VR content over the web? So instead of being tied to like Unity or having somebody download an app, can you have somebody go to a website and show AR VR content? And when it was coming out like 3 or so years ago, it was cool, but it was terrible. You know, it's like what do I do with my phone? Like, does this work? And now it's pretty cool. It's pretty slick. You can scan a QR code or an image, and it'll pop up in a web browser. And now you see content, you can interact, and it's fast. It's not making you sick. It's not jittery. And so I think we're hitting that conjunction point where we can push enough data. We can do the processing seamlessly enough that at the end of the day, the user doesn't really care how they get it. They just want a good experience. And so we're streamlining that experience. So I'm pretty excited about that. Brianna, what about you? Are there tools that are coming out? Is there hardware that's coming out that you're excited about, or you think will be crucial for the industry as we move forward?
I think one thing that people often ignore, that when everyone gets really excited about mixed reality, is the data security aspect of it. Because even, like, as we were saying, like, having to get access to a company's network, that is often, honestly, probably bypassed, at least in my experience, with these headsets, because we just want to see the cool stuff. So I think a focus on that would be pretty, like, it needs to happen, because otherwise we're gonna get too far ahead and we're gonna miss our opportunity.
Yeah, talking about privacy is an interesting topic, and honestly, there aren't too many people talking about privacy in XR yet. There's a company that was based here in Austin a while back. I think they've kind of shuttered their doors, but they were basically tracking user data in VR. So what are you looking at? How's your body moving? and then interpreting that to understand your experience in VR, with the end goal of being able to sell that to advertisers. So if in an experience, this phone is really intriguing and everybody, anytime they're in the experience, wants to grab the phone and play around with it, well, now can they sell ad space on that phone screen in the VR experience? And it's interesting to me, like, the web captures so much information on us already, but it's still like kind of dispersonalized. Thinking about somebody or an advertising company understanding your body movement, your body language in an experience is a little like intrusive to me. You know, I mean, probably making a lot of money there, but it's a little intrusive. And so that's an interesting topic of just as you're building content for VR, understanding that at the end of the day, people are going to be in those, and
Yeah.
so making sure that we have privacy baked in there.
I mean, even with like the headsets, all we are really doing is allowing more cameras and sensors to be in our environment.
Right.
So, and at the end of the day, it's Facebook who is behind Oculus, and if we trust them, that is up to
You.
as
still trust
individuals.
Facebook.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on, everybody
Yeah,
does.
great track record.
Yeah.
On that note, I mean, that was the Face app, right, where you can make yourself look like your grandparents. That was that's a Russian-owned company, which, okay, it was scary, but if you think about it, what's crazy is that they're tracking it's like 96 individual data points on your face, and they can track the irises of your eyes. And so you think about that data, that's why those deep fakes work so well, is because I can read every nuance of your face. I mean, that was stuff that the NSA had like 10 years ago, and it was cutting edge, and now every single one of your phones in this room can do that. And so it is a bit scary in a sense.
For Remappable, we kind of a company that has had to deal with that since inception because we're dealing with HIPAA regulations. So we've actually had to think about that development structure of security starting at the beginning and the inception. Because even when we're doing even just simple pilot testing for user interface, if we're dealing with an actual patient record or touching into a hospital record system, we have, I mean, it's pretty crazy, and I'm not trying to turn anybody off from going into the health vertical because it's important. I think that's one of the few fields in XR that actually, because we're actually almost forced to do it. We have to think about blockchain being laid up on top of it because those data packets have to be completely secure. And so I'm just kind of interjecting there.
And an opportunity.
Yes.
And an opportunity. There's a friend of mine in town that I think they shuttered the company as well, but not for any reason. Good business. It was a bad group of, not a great, what is it? You need a good idea, a good team, and good timing or something. The team just didn't work well. But they were using eye tracking technology to diagnose concussions, right? Because you got 90% of the kids playing football out there. You got old Billy Bob out on the field who's like, all right, I mean, look at my finger, okay, get back out there, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of brain damage that happens to young kids, especially playing, contact sports. And so they, using eye tracking, were able to be like, well, your rapid eye movement's way off the charts, dude. Like, you're out of here. So there's benefits, I think, just as well as drawbacks to the amount of data and stuff you can pull out of these devices. So it's scary and cool all at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, we rely on it too because of a facet of some of the therapy vertical, the actual combination therapies we use is rapid eye movement. So we actually are building towards that, but it's kind of weird because when you talk to people about it in the space, they get a little creepified when it's like, oh yeah, I can tell what you're looking at, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's right.
So I want to pivot the conversation a little bit to folks that are getting into the entrepreneur space here in the XR industry. What advice would you guys have for early founders or people considering starting a company in the AR/VR space?
Market validate your idea yesterday.
yeah, day before yesterday.
That was one of the things that we learned really early. I made the joke earlier about we're gonna build 360 video because it's cooler than 2D video. Okay, right? Nobody cared. And so real market validation, we still fight that all the time. We have data that proves 360 video on social media is significantly more engaging than 2D video, and advertisers still are just like, okay. It's like, well, you're selling, your value is based on how many engagements you get. Why are you even not even listening to what I'm saying? And so, anyway, that's it. Validate it, get it out there, let people play with it, break it, see what works, see what doesn't work.
Strangely enough, my answer to the question is have access to some place that has mentorship and available libraries with current hardware and able to test, because you kind of run into this really horrible problem where you can validate over, cross-platforming, because you don't have access to all that hardware, because it's cost prohibitive. But Capital Factory does an exceptional job in the XR team here.
I'll send you $20 later.
I know, I want some dinner and a drink. Yeah, but it's accelerated, I'm gonna be really honest, it has accelerated our development so much faster because we have the access to this library.
Yeah.
Because it's cost prohibitive at this point in time, so,
Or you discover stuff doesn't work
Yeah.
really quickly, which is cheaper to do here than on your own time.
yeah.
Our first AR app, we spent so much time and money building this beautiful user experience, and the first 24 people that used it, they had no fucking clue how to use it. None. It was just like, oh god. So we scrapped it and started over, and it worked great the second time. But we could have saved a lot of money if we would have just gotten people's hands on it.
Having a library available.
Yeah.
And also, make sure that you check out all the new AR libraries that are starting to become open source, because they are an amazing resource for object recognition, and a lot of people don't know they exist. So,
That's coming back to the conversation of how we've seen tools be built and hardware progress. I remember seeing, and it was an Alchemy Labs video about 3 years ago they're showing, it was like a step-by-step instruction on how to do mixed reality, like green screen with the camera. And it was so complicated. I tried to set it up here, and I spent the better part of a day, and then it was just like, can't do it, done. And then come back to it 2 months later, and it's like, man, there's 3 other people who built really easy tools to do this, and now it's kind of plug and play. And so on the tool side of creating VR, there's a lot of libraries and open source libraries that the people that are probably smarter and more domain experts than you guys are in certain subjects have already built. So make sure to stay on top of that stuff. Brianna, I'd love to hear your thoughts of having worked in startups, having worked in this space. What advice would you have for someone who's wanting to build an AR VR product?
I would say just do it, in the words of Shia LaBeouf. Because there's not really any excuse now besides maybe not having a device, but there's other ways that you could go about that if you have a phone. But just actually sitting down and knocking work out, because no one's gonna hire you if you can't prove what you know. But yeah.
Nothing to it but to do it. Okay, so first off, I'd love to give a round of applause for our panelists. And we've got plenty of time left for questions from y'all. This is what the event is, to let you guys ask questions of myself or the panelists. So yeah, we'll kick it off.
Yeah, I guess, Clint, you probably get into this a little bit more. First time I put on VR was awesome. I think I got into a Dali world or something like that, like the Dali painting.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind. This is a couple of years ago. And basically what this company was doing, they were building group therapy sessions at the time. So they were doing, a lot of people don't want to go to the doctor, that kind of thing, but being able to put a headset on, the whole idea is you can go to a group therapy session. So this is the healthcare vertical, but my experience of using it was just it was so blocky, I felt like I was in Minecraft. So I don't know, they were already gonna get bought anyway, so, I just didn't see the potential there, but where do you see most of the potential in this space going, if at all? Where do you guys kind of see the future of VR in general? Do you see it being more gaming? Do you see it more kind of in every vertical?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to ask that question, because I'm just going to say healthcare all the time, because I see it as it's a game changer to me. It's taking those inaccessible therapies and actually being able to deliver it remotely. And if you can do that, you're basically disrupting the entire healthcare industry, and I'm all for that. So, healthcare. But the thing that's happened over the last couple of years is that the insurance companies and the payers have started to realize that there's actually a value prop there. That they see that if they can pull that cost down over the lifetime of a patient, after they leave acute care, they are actually making money. And that's the hurdle that has to happen with healthcare. And it's starting to occur, and it's really starting to catch on in the last couple of years, where it's patient-focused, and that they're seeing the payer, which is the insurance companies or the VA, which we work with, they're actually seeing that value prop. They're going, wait a minute, this costs us $100,000 in the first year an amputee victim leaves the hospital because they can't get to a regional clinic. That's just in travel costs and physical therapy. just in travel costs and physical therapy. That's not prescriptions, that's not, and we can pull that cost down for face-to-face if they wanna invest in us to $12,000. So that's basically my answer to there. So I think that is really where it's at in my mind, in my opinion.
I'll piggyback on that. So I see a lot of companies that are coming through Capital Factory and see what they're working on, and so we've got some good data points there. One of the other industries that's really having a lot of traction is in the training industry, and specific training groups, right? So when it's hard to get to, hard to recreate the training environments, expensive to do this. Yeah, dangerous, absolutely. These are all areas that, to Clint's point, the people who are running these programs are seeing the actual cash dollar ROI on. And it's taken a while. And I'll be the first to say that VR is super sexy. So that Minecrafty experience you got, that company was probably able to go raise a lot of money. And there's lots of companies that raised a lot of money that then couldn't quite deliver fast enough because of hardware, because of software, for a lot of different reasons. And so because of that, I think that the proof of ROI is just now starting to happen. Companies are still starting to see it. And y'all might see this as well, but there's still a lot of companies who are still dipping their toes in. They want to do a proof of concept project, but they're not ready to commit to a full program. Where I am seeing organizations commit to a full program that's based in VR are groups like the military and the Air Force. There's a group downstairs called AFWorks that is building VR pilot training. And so a lot of times the military are early adopters for technologies. I think another piece to add on to that is in the hype of VR, I think it was pitched as a silver bullet. Like, yeah, you can replace all of your pilot training with VR. That's a terrible idea. You still need pilots in planes, right? But if you can replace like that middle 40% of the training, well, that's a lot. That's still a lot of savings. And so I think that the logistics of ROI in the AR VR space are still getting proved out, but you're starting to see it turn the corner, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot. So when we started, we were selling a lot of the glitz and the glamour for advertisers, right? Because they got making stuff shinier, if you will. And now more of our business is coming from businesses looking for solutions. So the one we're doing right now is for a worldwide provider of call centers, right? They sell call center services to big businesses. You want to go visit a lot of these locations. So it's simple, like, hey, we got to get 6 executives into a call center somewhere in India. Well, just making that happen logistically is a pain in the ass, and now you have this. Actually what triggered this for us, a gift and a curse, if you will, is the coronavirus. They were like, oop, nope, no travel, like no Asian travel whatsoever, which is like half of their business. And so we're creating a business solution where you can now put a VR headset on, and all of a sudden now you can tour in real time their call centers, and you can chat with the people that are there, right? So that to them is a huge cost saver, and it adds the glitz and glamour. Similar stuff. We're doing training right now. We're doing some big training stuff, but same thing, right? Lots of that.
Yeah, that telepresence idea. I mean, you worked on this with NASA.
Yeah.
Just the idea of actually not having to do that travel. And I mean, I feel the same way about it. That there's so much value in that.
And there's so much more opportunity there,
Yes.
right? See a lot of stuff, like simple stuff that's easy to wrap your head around, like firefighter training. Yeah, it's easy to practice putting out a fire when you're not actually burning, And so, but they're using that to augment their training programs, and they're seeing real results. And you're also seeing much the science that they're able to prove how, like you said, that first VR experience you had, you're like, oh, I remember that, like it was blocky and it was shitty, but I still remember it vividly. That doesn't necessarily go away with VR, right? It leaves that impression. It creates real memory. So it's got a lot of value in when you talk about medical, training, sale.
I saw a really cool one, just kind of jumping in there the other day. It's for training for people that are actually installers for the large windmills.
Mm-hmm.
So they can actually do that training on the ground before they put them up that pole. And it's kind of cool because it allows them to actually find out if they can actually handle those heights even before they take them up there, or even be able to handle the job.
There's a company in town, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but they were an educational content company that trained people how to install solar panels and HVAC. And so they've been doing this for like 10 years, and then VR started coming out, and they're like crushing it because now they're sending out VR headsets to people to like train their employees on how to do HVAC installation, but they can like do a lot of that training at home in a VR headset, and then they just have to come into the office or come into the building like, you know, for only a week instead of 3 months. So, all right, other questions? In the back there.
I have a feeling this is for Ricky et al. So first of all, I put on the same Galaxy 6, and I thought it was crack cocaine, although I never had crack cocaine. And I saw the same Cirque du Soleil and the Asian family sitting right next to me, and I thought, my God, this is going to be incredible. So that in mind, if you had to make a 1-minute video and put it in the hands of somebody who is not right here, what would you do from a practical standpoint? What is there? Is it YouTube VR that you can just take a video and send it to your aunt?
Like a distribution,
somebody's
you're
aunt
asking
in
like
New
distribution
Jersey?
question?
Yeah, like if you had to literally make a product right now of like a 30-second or a 1-minute video, and you were to put it into that New Jersey aunt's hands because she's obviously ahead of the curve, what would you do to make that happen? I'm looking at $6 headsets.
Yeah,
I'm
the
looking at
cardboards,
YouTube VR.
I don't, yeah, the cardboards are
What's
tough.
there right now for us to use this technology so we can actually put a 30-second or a minute video out?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a good answer there, to be frank.
And that's what I'm trying to pull together. I know YouTube VR is coming together.
It's the hardware, right? Your phone, you can do this thing, right, which works for some stuff, or you can look
Yeah.
around. Cardboard, avoid it. I mean, they're okay. Kids love them.
Yep.
If this is for children, kids don't care. We've had great success with kids using VR cardboard.
Yep.
You know, we've also seen where what I think Brance was talking about this. You can get pretty good, like the Oculus Go now is only like $150, which is pretty cheap. And there's another company we're starting to use, and we actually
It's
like.
still $199, but yeah, it's definitely.
Well, I think they dropped they dropped them down to $149. They were a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But either way, $200
Yeah,
bucks. We'll go with that.
yeah.
There's another company, Pico, P-I-C-O, which I prefer actually because it's not Facebook and they use better hardware. They're getting their shit from the exact same factories in China as, but it's they run on pure Android. Those you can get even cheaper if you buy them in bulk. You put them in a Pelican case and you ship somebody a headset. You make it a whole experience. That's what I was talking about earlier with our Wi-Fi kits, right? That is an experience. So it's not just about, hey, how do I get someone to watch this video? What experience am I creating for that user? So if you get a branded Pelican case, it opens and has beautifully written directions and a headset, and like, oh man, that customer or that person you're reaching out to will never forget that experience. Now you have to convince them to send it back to you. But you know, if they're, you know, or if it's training, I mean, if you're training an employee, $250 is nothing, you know. Or if you're selling $200,000 CNC machines, $250 is nothing. So.
I'll double down on that as well, of looking at the end-to-end customer experience, the end-to-end user's experience of that. So putting yourself in someone's shoes of never having done VR before, there's already a lot of content out there. So if we're kind of like separating the content piece out of that, really looking at like what is going to resonate with that person. You know, are they interested in sports? Are they interested in theatrical or cinematic stuff? Or are they gamer, you know? And finding something that is content-wise is interesting to them, and the level of interactivity is good based on their level of experience. So I'll maybe give a couple examples here. Arizona Sunshine is a game that Ricky mentioned before. I do a fair amount of VR, and the first time a staff member put me in that game, I shit my pants because there's zombies coming at me. I don't know how to work the guns, and I was like, this is terrifying. Ripping the headset off. And I've been in VR a lot, but it just wasn't the right content for me. It like wasn't the right setup. For myself, my mom came to town, and I put her in some VR, and I put her in this piece called Dear Angelica, which is like a very like low interactivity. It's kind of a cinematic VR piece. The story is kind of unfolding around you. But the content is about this woman who has lost her mom. And my mom was like, she's like crying, and she's like, Brad's like, no. And that was a mess up on my end. I like totally misjudged. I thought she would like this content, but it was too intense, too fast, you know. And so I would look at what content is already out there, what's the level of interactivity that people are going to have to engage with content, and then to Riki's point, finding a hardware piece that can accommodate that. The Quest is great, the Go is great for 360 stuff. You know, phones and iPads are good, kind of like gimmicky things, I think, but to really blow someone's mind, I think you need a full headset.
And understand again who your user is. Because again, we did some education stuff a few years ago, and kids are totally different than like a 60-year-old board member of a Fortune 1000 company, right? The experience they expect is completely different. So,
Brianna, Clint, do you have thoughts there?
Well, piggybacking on kids experiencing VR, they are probably the best test subjects because they know how to do everything. Babies know how to unlock iPhones as soon as they're born, I guess. I don't know.
It's genetic
But
now.
yeah.
I always say that kids are the best user testers because they're honest and they'll tell you exactly what you need to know.
Appreciate that.
So I think my question is for Clint, because it is a little different what you do. How do you go through that user testing? Not to set up, thanks Ricky, but not to set it up, but how do you set up the user testing and how do you like really focus on, because you got a specific niche that you're trying to achieve, and how do you do that?
Well, specifically for us, because there's a whole technical aspect to working with patients. Number one, that in the medical field, there's actually these terms DON and DOF, which really means easy on, easy off, and that's actually something that has to do with prosthetics, with any kind of medical equipment whatsoever. It's just a common term. So we actually have to focus on our testing from that direction, where it's not quite like VR, because the experience that we are actually giving to somebody is something that actually they used to have. So we're actually digging into their trauma and re-delivering an idea that actually pulls down the trauma into a manageable level. So we have to look at that kind of user testing a lot differently. So our ease in, ease out, like the learning curve that you guys are talking about in VR or the specifics, we're having to find that steady medium or that average space where anybody can actually work in. And it gets really, really complicated, but you know, we're really redefining that paradigm, so we're not, you know, affecting a trauma too much one way or making it more accessible across the board. So we have to be careful, basically, that we're not actually targeting a specific group. So that puts us in a different position as a company, and it actually as developers. So we're always looking at that patient focus, especially from the trauma standpoint. So it is different. It is actually completely the opposite. So yeah, great question, thanks.
All right, what other questions do we have?
For the panel, you know, how many people are in your team, and, you know, as a founder or head of a department, like, where does your personal skills need to be, you know, develop, you know, programming versus finance or just leadership? What's this percentage split on that kind of, as being the leader or founder?
Good
Yeah.
question.
I mean, I say we're about 6. We have some like part-time guys and gals. We do a lot of different stuff. So we have a core team of folks. I wear all the hats. Some days I'm a tester, but mainly what I do is I produce projects. So it's managing clients. But I have to understand that, like, I have to talk the talk, right? So if people always ask me, there's a technical guy in the room who asks me some super complex question, I can't look like a complete idiot, right? But I also have to, but we're a small creative studio startup thing, so we're just, you know, all over the board. But about 6, started with 1.
We're 3 people. We farm out some work. Brianna was originally part of our team, but IBM got her.
Should I
So-
sit between you guys?
I know, there's a little bit of fighting going on here, I'm not sure. No, actually, he's amazing. Yeah, so there's 3 of us. I mean, it's just like Ricky says, we wear all the hats. That's it. I'm testing, I'm programming, I'm in Unity, I'm in business meetings. It's just, you have to learn how to, I mean, I honestly believe that that kind of bootstrap mentality actually works much, much better in the Austin environment. People respond to it better, they see that kind of tenacity, and they see it, and that actually makes a huge difference. When you build out a huge team, I think people think you're throwing money at stuff. You're not really passionate about what you're doing. But that's my opinion, so.
I just want to piggyback on something you said that I just kind of thought about. One of the things that I struggled with earlier is when I brought on a kind of it's a long story, but I went from 0 developers to 3 all at once because they were kind of already a team. And I, subconsciously maybe or unconsciously, I had to train them up on like business practices, communication practices, right? Because they were just like hardcore, like, give me the work.
Yeah.
But they never took the time a lot of times to slow down and like zoom out and understand, why are we building this? What is the client expecting? You know, how to give like me the data and feedback I need. You know, like for a while it was almost like I felt bad asking them for updates because they almost seemed like annoyed with me. I'm like, no, guys, like I just need to tell the client. They don't care if you have 3 weeks of work left, but if we don't tell them anything, this is really bad. And so now these guys are becoming really good business kind of minds of their own. And so it's changed the way our company works dramatically. So everybody has to wear all the hats in that regard.
Yeah, I've run into that too.
But
Yeah.
and that's what every company I've ever worked in or started, it's always the same.
Yeah, I mean, even with IBM, my team is 5.5 people, because one's part-time, but everyone's expected to kind of do everything. That's just how it is. Whether or not you actually do that is dependent on you, but I think even turning over to the development side after being the designer and going through all that, it was crazy because there was a little period where I would design something and then I would also be responsible for implementing it, which was crazy because having to think about an idea and then realize that like you were responsible for it and how to do that is insane, and I was dreaming in code. But having that perspective gave me a whole different understanding and appreciation for developers, because that's a whole different like way of thinking, and yeah, very appreciative of having seen the other side, for sure.
I don't run a company, so I can't comment here personally, but I was running an event yesterday and a founder answered a very similar question. He was saying that when he started his company, he thought that he had to do everything. And so he was trying to do everything. And I don't know if that's partly talking the talk or just being bootstrapped and feeling like you had to do everything. But he said that when he did that, he really couldn't focus on running the business. And so pretty quickly he had to find the team that could help him do that. And so, especially with VR, there's a lot of specialty things, right? And so you can't hire a full-time like modeler if you don't need all that work, right? So finding how you can get the resources that you need, but still being able to run the company. A few other things he mentioned was developing a team that you can communicate really well with. So like, especially when you're talking about like sort of intangible, like, okay, I want lightning, and I want it to feel like the Back to the Future, like lightning on the ground with the tires, and the person's like, yeah, okay, I know what you mean, and I'm gonna build you that. So communication is important, and then when you are finding those people on the team that are really, really passionate about a subject or a task, just let them do that. Like double down on having that person do that thing, because that's what they're gonna be best at. They're really good at like sound design. Just make them do sound design, you know, and trying to have everybody wear every hat, you're gonna burn them out, you're not gonna get the best quality of work out of everybody. So that can be hard when you're building a game or building immersive content, but the more you're able to do that, I think that'll pay off. All right, what other questions do we have? I've got this one, and then we'll go to
Hopefully this is a segue, not asking the same question. But for those of us on the business side, what are some of the main business challenges that are really unique to this VR space, and also I mean, what's a good way to engage engineers kind of as that yin to yang?
Are you talking about what, from an engineering perspective, are you talking about hiring people?
Maybe not hiring, supply chain, sales, marketing, maybe selling customers on adopting this as part of, I don't know, like their marketing strategy? I'm just, you get like just
Yeah.
from like a business development maybe perspective, or I don't know.
Yeah, our biggest challenge is people's lack of, people have tried VR once, like 3 years ago at South by, like your experience, right? Like it was blocky, and that now is their opinion of XR in general. They just bucket it all into the same thing. Like, I tried that once, it's not my thing. It's like, what? What did you try, right? Like, tell me more about this. So we educate a lot. The simplest way to do that is to let people try it, right? That's the
Yeah,
simplest
I-
answer.
yeah,
Put
it's
people
all-
in it, a
it
good
is-
experience.
Huge hurdle is
Yeah.
getting people to get past their initial experience that they had 3 years ago at South by Southwest and seeing how far things have come in such a quick point in time.
we-
Demo.
Yeah, we pitched, we had an entire team at an ad agency in San Antonio committed to doing this idea. They loved it, everybody's bought in, they saw the ROI. The CEO came in and gave me a 30-minute lecture on VR as a dead technology, it'll never take off, all this stuff, and he refused to put on the Oculus Quest and try it. And all he had tried was some experience years ago that we have no idea what it was, but he just like, he was sitting there telling me
The
it's
lawnmower
bullshit, and he like
experience.
won't touch it. He won't put it on his face, and he's just sitting there, it's like, oh, okay,
It was
I'm
probably the
leaving now.
lawnmower man experience in 1997.
Right, but anyway, my point is that was, right, I think I told you the story earlier about the Airbnb thing, right? Like, they walked in and closed a huge contract within like 3 minutes of them seeing a well done, like, and that wasn't the only thing that closed it, obviously it was a good product, but, so.
Demo.
Demo.
Because we run into it, especially in the medical field. It's the pushback on it even being an acceptable tool is so extreme. I mean, I deal with it every day. But people are softening up, but it's when you show them a better source or a better headset or a seamless demo that may not be your product, but puts them in a space where they can see how that actually transfer exists.
I wanna just mention something you said right there that I think it's actually really important. We, a lot of times, don't always use our experiences to show people stuff, right? So if you're building something and you're like, how am I gonna do, I wanna raise money or I'm trying to do this thing, like how am I gonna get the money to build what I want right now? We all the time show clients, we're like, we're gonna build something like this. And they look at it and they go, oh yeah, that's the thing I want. So don't be afraid to teach people and get them hooked on the technology, and then you can sell your product.
And that was actually an incredibly hard lesson for us to learn. I mean, it really was a huge hurdle because we would actually want to actually show elements of our product like immediately polished out, but when you're working in this, the way we are in such a small group, that's just not really feasible. And it was a hard lesson to learn, and it's a great lesson to take away from this because it definitely makes a huge difference. The reception is, I mean, 1,000% better. It's like, and especially with the new Oculus, it's, for some reason, it's there.
I'll add some anecdotes here. Before the Quest came out, I kid you not, one of the things I heard a lot was, I don't like cables. Cables aren't sexy. And so you have like executives who are just like, yeah, like this is cool, I can see it being valuable, but like I don't really want cables around. And I was just like, all right, okay, I guess it's just the hardware is not right for you right now. So that was one. Another barrier I think in the business side of this, come more in the sales side of it, is where the budget's coming from and what are the barriers to getting budget into the hands of a startup. So a lot of large corporate groups, if you're larger than a certain point, you probably have an immersive team. So all the immersive budget is going to that team. And then if you're below that point, well, is immersive like a part of your strategy? Do you have money just for a like proof of concept or a like a glitz and a glamour thing? Is it enough to actually like for you as a startup to sink your teeth into and build a like sustainable business around? So I think that's still an issue with from the customer side. And then maybe like a little bigger picture, what I see is that still I feel like it's hard to become a product company in AR VR. Like those businesses are coming around, but almost all product companies still at the end of the day are content companies. They're having to create content themselves, and so I think that's a challenge in the business side of industry.
And for us too, actually, we picked a niche vertical on purpose to develop the underlying structure so we can actually utilize those techniques into other therapies. So that was a different way of looking at the development structure, and the way it also takes longer, so you have to be a lot more patient. But to actually break down all those buckets ahead of time, to see which elements, when you do show somebody something, you go, but this, by the way, can be used for stroke victims. The same underlying technology and programming, it just has to be tweaked a little and put into a different platform. So you have to be conscious of that all constantly.
So we got time for a few more questions. Let's go in the back there and then here.
So I think Clint touched upon this. Where do you think the future of VR is? Is it in the cloud or at the edge or both? Or?
I think we all have the same answer to that question. I believe it's in the cloud. The cloud applications are the future. And latency issues. I mean, they're just that streaming and that amount of data that it is just multiplied so much in just the last year. It is insane, and it just opens up so many opportunities and so many possibilities in so many different ways. I mean, it's gonna be a slow adoption, and we're still gonna have to deal with the cross-platforming issues with companies not wanting to touch other companies, but there's ways around it. There's ways around it. I mean, we made 2 connects to talk to each other through 3 different networks 3 years ago. You can do it now. It's totally possible.
Do you think you're doing hand tracking or something?
Hands are the next thing.
It's
I mean,
there. You can use hand tracking on the Quest right now.
you can do it on Quest, and it's amazing.
Is
It
it
is.
or does it go back to the cloud?
Say what? That's done locally.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So do you think it will be the edge, which is local,
Yeah.
to the device?
Think
or
about
will
it,
go
the
back-
simplest way I think you can think about it is think about it like a mobile device, right? Like that, this the mobile device is only valuable because the entire chain of things that are connected to it. It only works great as my mobile because it's connected to a cell phone network. It also only works well because it's connected to the internet, so I can use my email. It also only works well because it has a great camera, the hardware is built in, and the battery technology lets it last all day, and it, you know, it's waterproof, so I can check email in the shower. But if you don't have a waterproof phone, you should buy
Don't.
one. What? So I think that it's a whole, you know, it always comes down to the end user, right? That's really the end is Brianna gonna pick this up and use it or not, right? Like that's the question, I think. But for me, it's a whole product. We have to think about it anyways, a whole picture. Like the whole, I don't know I want to say life cycle, but that's not right. Like the whole, you know.
That's a good word for it, actually. It's
Yeah.
kind of the life cycle of it.
Yeah,
Because
there's
it's just
so
always
many
moving.
pieces that are
Yeah.
involved. You can't just build. I mean, you could focus on one, right? We're gonna build the best VR camera or whatever. But as a product or a solution or a business, I think you have to look at the entire cycle. But it's also all changing really fast, so we'll see.
All right, so we've got one more question here, and then after the question, we'll head to the kitchen where we've got a happy hour going on for everybody. So we can keep the conversation going on there, but it's time for some drinks after this. So.
Thanks. So Clint, you talked about your passion about the physiology,
Right.
basically. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the journey that led you to the vertical that you've chosen, and kind of wondering if you were mastering around different.
That's an interesting
spots.
story. I won't go into complete detail, but I'll do my little pitch pretty quick. I fell off a diving board when I was 10 years old, backwards 15 feet onto my head. I died, and when I woke up, I was blind. I was haunted for until my young adult life by being misdiagnosed, and obviously I had traumatic brain injury and PTSD, but when it occurred to me that wasn't even a thing. So I went through this whole process that actually forced me into really jumping into what perception was, because I was dealing and battling that every single day of my life. I was introduced to a doctor who was part of the armed services, and he said, you've got to go to somebody who's a specialist because you have traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And I did, and he introduced me to visualization therapies, and over the course of a year and a lot of hard work, I actually completely could manage out all of my disabilities, but that's not what it is. Manage the things that before I was told that I would never be able to manage without pharmaceuticals. So that's how that started. And then I also, when I went back to UT, met an amputee victim who was actually addicted to opioids. And it kind of the two things put together, plus finding out about XR, it just was a no-brainer. I didn't have a choice.
Kind of
It was a path.
straight path.
Yeah. made no sense not to.
Awesome. Well, let's give another round of applause to our panelists.
The long version's long.
So if y'all want, so we can head out here to the front desk,
We haven't heard
hang
that
a
one
left
in a
and
while.
another left, and we'll have a happy hour for
I
y'all.
was debating whether or not I would.
I don't know, it just makes
It's just not a
so much
good,
sense.
I know, but then it's
Like, just
like,
like,
you know,
oh,
and then I
yeah,
went
that
into
was-
immersive, you know, exhibitory space and motion control. It all makes sense to me looking back, but it's kind of hard to start in a panel situation with that story.
That's our prize.
I know. Oh, JL, this is Brianna. JL is the principal project manager for this.
I heard someone ask you before what's going on for South by this year. I would love to hear your less public answer to that, essentially.
I would love to hear
Yeah, I'm right behind you on that, so. Thanks, yo. Appreciate it. I haven't posted anything on the social channels in a while.
Yeah. So Rick, I was gonna ask you, when can we expect the VR bar, you know, Tinder VR? when we
Tinder.
do that?
Well, those are two questions. It's here. So, all right. So I was sitting in my house. My guy lives with me right now. You know, buddy of mine from Boston, very traditionally raised, right? You know, thinks I'm a little kooky, all this sort of stuff. And he was playing with this new VR system,